Hi guys, Samantha from Jessama Tutorials here, and today I'm going to show you a cute jelly roll cane which we are going to turn into a bracelet. So I've got 4 different colours here, so you can need black and white and then 2 colours of your choice. I'm going to be using Souffle today because that means that we're not going to have to worry about sanding, and it's going to give us a nice crisp but textured image at the end of this. They're also, all 4 of these sheets have been rolled out to about 1mm thick. Okay, so I'm just going to put the black and white to the side for the moment, and we are going to work with these 2 sheets. And you can see the colours in the supplies before the start of the video, but I do believe this is pistachio, and this one is called Mai Tai. And then the black and white is igloo and poppy seed. So I'm just cutting these into a square, at least one of them anyway. Okay, and then you're going to cut the same size for the other one. And now this is a little small, so I'm going to just trim it back a little bit more so that they're still both the same size, like so, and just separate those 2. Okay, and then those excess pieces you can just pop straight back into your colours. Okay, now I'm just going to press these together, and now I'm keeping it as a square because I don't really want to reduce this cane too much, and so we're going to end up with a nice thick cane with plenty of loops. Okay, and then your first job is going to be to just bend over one side, like so. And then begin rolling. And there you can see we have a very basic spiral. I don't want to have too much of a spiral because when we reduce this down and have a bracelet, I want it to be quite nice and bright. Now I'm just going to cut this like so. Peel off this edge. Like so. And then just pinch this green down over the top of that. There we go. And there's your jelly roll. Very easy. Okay, then I'm just going to roll it against my tile just to smooth it out and get rid of that seam, and just to reduce it down a little way. This will also get rid of air bubbles and it will compress the layers together. Just going to even that out, and what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to bring over an acrylic block. Just going to roll with that, and that will give me a smooth edge, and it also makes sure that it's all basically the same width. Okay, then chop off these edges, so, and there you can see the pattern. Now, remember how long that is, and now you want your black and white to be about that long. So we'll see that in a moment. First thing to do is going to be to trim your black or white, whichever one you want to do first, down into a square or a rectangle. And this is about, each colour here is about 1/4 of a block of souffle. Also keep in mind you can use any brand of clay you want for this. I just prefer souffle because it means that we don't have to worry too much about sanding later on. Okay, and then again you're just going to trim this to size so that they're both the same. And all that excess can go straight back with your other colours. just pressing that so that it's somewhat stuck together, and then I'm going to roll it through on my thickest setting of my pasta machine, like so. I'm going to take it down one more setting, and I'm lengthening it so that it is a long rectangle, like so. And I'm going to take it down one more setting so that it's a millimetre thick, like so. Okay, then trim off these ends, like so, and cut. Okay, now I'm going to bring this over, and you can see now this is the same size, well, not same size, same length. I'm just going to cut a strip and lay it down like so. Try to cut another strip the same size. Take that and lay it down. And now these are a little fiddly actually, so what we can do to make that a little easier is to just cut this in half and to stack it. And this will just give us some more room to work, because those other ones were a little small and quite fiddly. Okay. Cut. And just cut a whole bunch, as many as you can, out of this. And then pop them together like so. Then continue doing that until you've used up all the clay. There we go. So that is what you should end up with. So now I'm just going to pop this to the side, and we are going to smooth this piece out. So just grab it, pop it onto a piece of plain printing paper, and then grab another piece, and we're just going to burnish this so that all the pieces sit together. Now the important thing is to not burnish against the stripes, you want to burnish with them. And this will prevent distortion. And all we're doing is we're just smoothing out the stripes so that they're all one solid sheet. So that when we do put it onto our jelly roll, it's not going to splinter. That's quite important. And also just so that it's one thickness, because even if you're pretty good at slicing your cane, you're going to have different thicknesses. So this is just to smooth that all out. Okay, and then I'll even bring over my roller to help make sure that it is all one thickness. That up. There we go. And I'm just going to trim these edges. There we go. Then keeping your fingers out of the way, use your blade to lift that up. Then grab your jelly roll. Now before we do make anything official, I just want to check that this is going to fit the entire way around. And it should fit the whole way around, yeah, that's going to fit. Okay, so I'm just pressing down one end to get it to stick. And then we're going to bring that up the whole way, and then just press gently and bring that back up. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to make a mark. Now this can be a little difficult. Let me just lift this up. The souffle, once it gets warm, can be a bit sticky, so that's what I'm struggling with. So I want to see where I want to break it off. So it's this white stripe right here. Try and cut that as cleanly as possible. Okay. and then you want that to sit right up against the other one. And now if you have a little bit of extra black, that's fine, that will blend into our black stripe on the other side. Then I'm just positioning it like so. Okay, then just smooth that out because you will have a few air bubbles. Okay, and then give it a light roll. And now you've got a cute little striped border around your jelly roll. Now this step is optional, you don't have to do it if you find it too complicated, as this is a beginner's tutorial, but it does add some interest. So let me just chop off the edge here and here, and there you can see it looks much more interesting now. Okay, so now what I want to do, now you have two options. I have a Souffle Clay slicer. If you have a Souffle Clay slicer, then you could bake the entire piece like so, and then you could chop it with the slicer later on to make sure that you get pieces that are exactly the same size, and that is what I want to do. However, if you do not have a slicer, what you will do is you'll put this into the freezer for at least half an hour so that this is solid and will have rested. Then you will take it out of the freezer and you will let it sit around until you'll find that when you take it out of the freezer it's a little wet, so you want to let it sit around, get rid of that wet. So basically rest it for another 10 minutes, dry it off if you have to, but don't handle it because your hands are warm. And then you want to take a nice sharp blade and you want to chop up each of the pieces. And now because it is souffle, I find that it cuts really nicely, and so there's very little distortion, but it's still going to distort a little bit, so the more you rest it, the better the slicing is going to be. And I'm actually going to do it that way because a lot of you, that's going to be how you slice it. But if you have a Souffle Clay slicer, the best way to do it would be to bake this and then cut it with that slicer. So I'm just going to let this sit in the freezer now for about half an hour. Then I will let it rest afterwards for about 10 minutes just so that it is nice and cold but not wet, and then I will show you how to cut it. Okay, now while that's in the freezer, I thought I'd show you what I do with the scraps. I don't always use the scraps because some of them don't work out very nicely, but sometimes you can end up with something quite pretty. So I'm going to see what a Natasha bead will look like if I play around with these. So I'm going to leave them all whole, and I'm actually going to take these little jelly roll pieces and I'm just going to reduce them. And you don't have to be specific and careful when reducing these, you can just quickly press them down and roll like so. And you will get distortion obviously, but because we're making a Natasha bead that really doesn't matter. I just want this to be stretching throughout the Natasha bead. So each of these little cane ends needs to be stretched. Okay, then you want to take these other little scrappy pieces, and I actually think I want to chop them up, so put these little pieces off to the side and just take your blade and just chop that up like so. And I'm just going to add these into that and squish it. And there's not a lot of precision going on here. I just find that it looks better if you stretch out those little cane pieces. Now just remember how the cane pieces are stretched, so they're lengthwise this way, so that's how I'm going to stretch this bit of clay. I'm just rolling and squishing and rolling and squishing and so on until I think that all the air bubbles are gone, because you want this to be nicely condensed together. You don't want air bubbles if you're going to be trimming this. or cutting it, excuse me. Okay, then I'll actually just use an acrylic block to get this started, just because I want to get it into a nice square shape. And then I will use the roller to just get that nice and sharp. So just roll, flip, roll and flip, and just continue doing that until you find that your edges are nice and crisp. Because the crisper the edges, the better the Natasha bead will fit together. Okay, then I'm just going to stretch out one side of this so that it forms a rectangle rather than a square, like so. And just roll this little bit out a little bit more, and then we can slice it. Okay, now I'm going to grab a nice sharp blade for that. Okay, and cut. And then you will line that up. And I'm not exactly thrilled with this one. It's not my favourite. I'm probably not going to end up keeping it. But that's basically what it looks like. I'm probably going to end up turning this into one of my handmade polymer clay stamps that I use in my jewellery, making. Or it might be used as filler for a bead, something along those lines. But I generally like to see whether I come out with something nice. If I don't come out with something nice, then I'll use it for other scrap techniques. But I always test to see whether it looks good. But I'm not that thrilled with it, so I'm probably going to end up using it as scrap. But anyway, that's what it looks like. So now let's move on to cutting that cane. Okay, so let me just bring that over. I've got it on a piece of paper. I find this is a nice way to dry it. You can just roll it along the paper and that will just soak up any of the condensation that might be on the outside of your cane. And also I just find that it's easier to cut when it is on paper. Now you want to find a ruler so that we can measure that we're getting exactly the right size. Okay, so I've got this ruler which should work pretty well. Okay, and I want each piece to be about 1/2 centimetre thick. So I'm going to position it this way because it will be the easiest to see. And now I want to just quickly move this over, and I want to cut off this end piece because that piece is going to always be a little messy, so that it's nice and straight now. Okay, and position it so that it is the right spot. Make a little indent, and basically do that the whole way up your cane, making those little indents like so, and then we can cut. Okay, and there we go. And I'm not sure if you can see those cuts, but I can. So now you'll go and cut straight down on each of those cuts. Like so. Okay, and there we go. So they all should be just about the same size. They might have a little bit of distortion. You shouldn't have too much. You will avoid that little bit of distortion if you baked it and cut it with the Souffle Clay slicer, which is why I recommend doing it. But for beginners, this is the best way to do it and to avoid distortion at the same time. Okay, and now I'm trying not to handle them too much. I'm just separating them out, because you can't bake them together like that. There we go. And this one I can see is a little off. Let me just try to cut that. And you can see they're distorted, so you can gently go around with your finger and try to sort that one back out. But you are going to get one or two duds. But there are basically all of them turned out perfectly, at least as far as we could get them. Now I'm just busy checking through and making sure that I am happy with them. And so now we want to put them into the oven for a full hour at Souffle's recommended temperature, and then after that's done we are actually going to drill them. Now you cannot drill these or pierce them when they are raw. You will distort them completely and you will ruin it. So please don't try to drill them when they are raw. You have to bake them, and then you use a handheld manual drill. You can use a push drill, or you can actually use a motorized drill. It's completely up to you, but you must not drill these while they are raw. That is very important. You will ruin it and then it will just look like a complete mess. So anyway, I'm going to put these into the oven at Souffle's recommended temperature. Something you can also do is very gently rub a piece of paper over the top. It's not completely necessary, but this can get rid of any fingerprints that you might have introduced. And then when they're out, we can then drill them. Okay, and here they are out of the oven. I did have to put them in a bath of cold water just to get them to cool down. That might be why you see some of them that are wet, but basically this is what they are. So you can see that the colours have dulled a little bit when they go in the oven, and this is one of the reasons why I wanted to make our actual spiral smaller. Not smaller, larger than usual, so that we didn't have as many spirals, so that the colours didn't blend together as much. However, if you're using some other brands, like Kato is really good for this. If you're using Kato, you can actually make a really small spiral with lots and lots of loops, and the colours will stay quite crisp, whereas with the souffle the colours can blend together quite easily, so I'd recommend making a larger spiral. So anyway, we need to drill these now, so I'm going to grab one. Let's see, which one should we do? This one. Put these to the side. Now this might be a bit daunting for those of you that are just starting. It's really not too difficult. You want either a manual hand drill where you have to twist it yourself. Let me just quickly zoom out for a moment. Or you want a push drill where what you do is you put the drill down onto whatever you're going to be drilling, and then you press down on this thing and it will make the drill spin for you, so like so. Or you can use a motorized drill, but that actually is pretty dangerous, and I don't typically tend to do that. I usually will go with either the manual drill or the push drill. And so I'm just going to make a hole on one side, like so. Just going to mark the other side quickly, and then I will do a hole on that side. And this just gives me a point to aim for. And then you'll just drill a bit through one side and then drill a bit through the other side until they meet up in the middle. That way, if your hole is not completely straight, you won't be able to see it because, well, they will meet up in the middle somewhere. But it's not like if you would, let me pause and explain. If you made one hole on one side and you just kept drilling on until you got to the other side, your hole might not necessarily be straight and you would easily be able to see that. But if you drill a hole this way halfway through, and then drill a hole this way halfway through and then meet up in the middle, even if they're not completely straight, it will still appear to be straight, and so it's a really nice way to drill your beads without worrying about having to be exact, especially if you're just starting with this sort of thing, because it does take a bit of practice. Okay, and so I'm just going to continue drilling now. And it is a little slow, so you might want to, I don't know, put on a movie or TV show, something like that, while you're doing this, because there are quite a few to drill and it can be a little time consuming, and it's not something that you want to rush because you can end up messing it up, which is something that you don't really want to do. So go, take it slow, relax, and just drill through all of your beads like so. and then when we're done with that, we're actually going to put them together. Okay, so we finished drilling all of them. There were 3 that I wasn't happy with. This one has a scratch. Let's see, there was another one that also had a scratch. Yeah, this one also had a scratch. So those ones I'm not going to be using. And then this one was quite wonky. So that one I'm also not going to be using. But the rest are all good to use. So I'm going to just bring over a piece of elastic. And I also have some spacers. Now what I would recommend doing is I would recommend stringing on one of these and then test out different spaces to see which ones you like. And now if this gives you trouble, you might want to drill it. There might be some stuff left over in it. And now I'm just going to test out some different spaces and see which ones I like. Okay, so I think I want to go with these ones. So I've got that one strung on. Then you're going to take a spacer and another piece. And now what I like to do is, if you have a look here, I've drilled it so at the top of the spiral always has a hole at it. So you want to try and keep the pattern the same as you go through. You can mix it up if you want, but I drilled it so that the pattern will be the same as we go through. So you can see there, all spirals facing the same way. And then you're going to string on as many as you need to create a bracelet, and if I have enough, I'll probably end up making a necklace as well if I can. Okay, there we go. Now if you wanted to tie this up to create a bracelet, you could, but I'm actually just going to pop a clasp on the end. I like using the elastic because it gives it a little bit of flexibility rather than some of the other cords. That's why I am stringing it on elastic. It's not necessarily because I want to create what am I trying to say? It's not necessarily because I want to tie it up like so. I do want to put a clasp on the end. It's just so that it's nice and flexible and easy to use. So now what I want to do is I just want to grab my findings, and there we go, and just pop your Charlotte crimp through. Pop a crimp on, and I'm just going to quickly grab a crimp, squish that, then bring that up and close over the top like so. Then you'll just bring this up again and then cut that. And this end also needs another spacer. And I also have to keep in mind when making these bracelets the size of your wrist, or the wrist you make it for the person you make it for, and the size of the clasp that you're going to be using as well. You have to just take that into account for the length. Okay, just bring over a different plier so that I can get in there. Squish that onto the piece. And then you cut like so. And then you close over the top again. Okay, then you want to grab a clasp like so and 2 jump rings. You want to open up a jump ring, pop it through the hole, pop your clasp on and close up the jump ring, and repeat on the other side. And everything that I'm doing here you will repeat for a necklace if you want, or bracelets if you want. So you don't necessarily have to make a necklace. Okay, and there we go, there's a very cute bracelet. And now this might be a little small for most of you, but as you can see that is basically a perfect size for my hand. But depending on how big your wrist is, change the length for that. And I'll show you when I've done the other ones. Okay, and there we go. They're all finished. So I decided against making a necklace and decided to create another 2 bracelets since I think the bracelets look better. The necklace might be a bit much, though if you want to, you could definitely make the necklace. So you can see out of a cane you can get quite a few pieces out of it. This is probably around, I'd say at least 3/4 of a block of souffle worth of clay, when I used a whole block of souffle when you put all of the colours together. So there really was very little waste. Once you cut up the cane, there's not really going to be any waste there. So it's a really fun project, great for market jewellery, and it just looks really cute. You could do this in a bunch of different colours. You could change up the border colour, you could even skip the border if you wanted to. So play around with it, have some fun, and I will see you in the next tutorial. Bye for now.